Hello, hello, hello. We're trying something a little new here. You will hear no cat noises in the background because I'm recording this one at school. Sorry for those of you who wait for those sounds. Let's talk about solar power. This map shows what they're calling photovoltaic power potential. This means how much energy could we likely generate if we use solar panels or solar power in this region of the world. So you can see there are some areas where there's very clear potential for solar power. The southwestern United States, as well as the northern part of Mexico. This part right here is sorry, Atacama Desert in Chile. Notice that a lot of desert regions have a lot of potential for solar power. If you are trying to find a place to use solar energy, any of these very dark areas would be great for it. Now, let's look at what percentage of electric power for a particular country was generated by solar. So, anything you see in the darker blue area produced a large portion of their power, of their electricity from solar power. So, there's this one country down here in the southern part of Africa, some countries in Europe. Chile over here, a few countries down here in Central America, and Australia and New Zealand as well. Other countries that are producing a decent amount of their power from solar power. The United States is not doing as bad as you would expect. It's between 2 and 5%. Russia and Canada obviously not being able to use much solar power because if you look at their photovoltaic power potential, they're just not going to be capable of producing a lot of solar power because they're not getting as much direct sunlight. All right. So let's talk about how solar power is generated. The major way by which you're probably familiar with is by using photovoltaic cells. Photovoltaic cells, aka solar panels, also called PV to be short for photovoltaic, are um, made of materials that are semiconductors. And what they do is they capture light energy directly and use it to make electrons flow. Remember, electricity is just the flow of electrons. Light strikes this semiconductor. It excites electrons. Those electrons leave the atom, usually towards some positively charged material, and then that is electricity when you make electrons flow. And so it directly uses the energy from light hitting the material to produce electricity. This is one of the few types of electric power that is not generated using a turbine. You can use these PV panels in smaller installations for for powering single buildings, like here you have a house, or you can put a ton of them up and create a solar farm. Now, there's a difference between active solar power and passive solar power, which we're going to talk about here. So, active solar collection uses the heat from the sun to heat some sort of liquid, and it uses electrical equipment, mechanical equipment, and stores that energy. It has to have some sort of electrical input. Usually, it has pumps or fans that are going to be active, and you see this here, and a solar collector that's being used to heat water. This would probably be for like a home's hot water heater. This is the boiler. Um, Here it's that's producing some heat, and then you also have solar power being used to heat water. You have a solar collector here that's going to gather heat from incoming sunlight, heat water, and then use it to heat water in a hot water heater. And usually it's going to be heat or it's going to be used to heat water or air. There's a specific type of solar power collection called concentrated solar power. So there are a couple of different types. Here we have a solar power tower, which, yes, I did enjoy the rhyme. Computers control mirrors and shift them to focus light onto a central tower. That central tower is going to contain either water or some sort of salt that's molten, so been melted and is very hot. That heat can be used to make steam to drive a turbine, and that turbine, when it turns, is going to turn a generator, and the generator produces electricity. So this is very similar to the traditional method of electricity production we've been looking at. It's just the heat source is coming from the sun. The great thing about this is depending on the material you use, you can actually store some of the heat that's being collected from the sun to operate this electric power generator at night. However, it is more expensive to build than PV solar farms, so that's why it's not going to be as common and it's not used as much as PV solar farms. You can also use this other device, this other system, which is a parabolic trough. A trough is just kind of, a depression in something, and parabolas are, the math shape that look kind of like a U. So you have these U-shaped mirrors, they're parabolic mirrors, and their job is to catch incoming light and focus it onto a pipe that is kind of running at their focal point. That pipe contains oil or water, which is then used to heat water to steam, to turn a turbine, to make a generator produce electricity. Then there are passive solar energy systems. So, what is passive solar energy? You're just absorbing heat directly from the sun. It's not going to require any sort of mechanical or electric equipment, and you usually don't collect energy that can be stored. It tends to have no moving parts. A lot of times it's in the design of the items that you're heating. So, for example, using large south-facing windows for people in the northern hemisphere will allow the warmth of the sun to come in during the winter. But as you see in this diagram here, the summer sunlight comes in at a steeper angle, and you can design your house to block that sunlight from coming in, thereby reducing your cooling costs in the summer. Whereas the more shallow angle at which winter sunlight enters allows it to enter through the window, and that is going to help heat the house in the winter and then reduce your heating costs. So, what are some of the environmental impacts of solar power? It tends to have a lower environmental impact than a lot of other types of energy and produces clean energy. It is expensive, especially when you're trying to install it, and since a lot of the places where you can easily generate solar power are in deserts, if you have a lot of these solar panels blocking sunlight from reaching the ground, it can negatively impact desert ecosystems. Remember, deserts aren't lifeless; they have plenty of plant and animal life there that could be negatively impacted by having these giant solar farms out there. Um, and then when you use concentrated solar power, like with the solar power tower and the parabolic troughs, that can use a lot of water. So here is a summary of solar power. What are some of the pros? You have a limitless supply of it. You get pretty good energy from it. So you're getting more energy than you put in, which is good because then we can use that energy. Low environmental impact. A lot of the environmental impact tends to come in the manufacture of the equipment rather than the running of the equipment. Ponds, if you're trying to have a solar farm, that can need large plots of land, which would then shade the ground or disturb it. It's inefficient in some areas, so you have to be in a particular area with a lot of photovoltaic potential in order to take advantage of solar power. And then you have to have some sort of storage, maybe a battery or of some sort, to store energy for nighttime use since you can't get solar power during the night, obviously. Alrighty, there you go.